Welcome to another episode of the Real Estate Mentor Podcast. I am your host, Jonathan Klunk, and here is where we bring you insights and wisdom from the best in the real estate industry. And today we have a great guest for you. His journey and achievements are nothing short of inspiring. Patrick Francey. He is not only the host of the Global Top 100 podcast and entrepreneurship, the Everyday Millionaire, but also the CEO of the Real Estate Investment Network. With over 40 years of experience in entrepreneurship and real estate, Patrick's story is a testament to the power of perseverance, hard work, and having a clear vision. From his humble beginnings in Canada, he's built a career that spans decades and has impacted countless lives. His success mantra, success is simple. That's an acronym, SIMPLE. That stands for significantly impact many people's lives every day. And we're going to dig into that and see how that has impacted his life over the past 25 years. And during that time, he has been a trusted advisor, mentor, and coach to numerous real estate investors, entrepreneurs, and aspiring individuals, guiding them towards success and growth in their businesses. Patrick, thank you so much for joining us today. It's great to have you.
Thanks for being, I'm happy to be here, and thanks for that intro. It's great.
You're very welcome. You can thank ChatGPT. Love to use technology everywhere I can.
Fantastic.
Well, tell us about how you got started in real estate. I think it's always great to create a baseline, talking about the role models, the influences that you've had, and what has really been the driving force leading you to where you're at now and the success that you've had.
Well, my journey, I've been on the planet a long time. I turned 65 years old, so I have a lot of history, and, I often refer to my entrepreneurial accidents, but getting involved in real estate was no accident. It was very intentional. Having said that, I was in Alberta in Canada and in Edmonton. I had my business and was doing quite well with my business. I've been an entrepreneur since 1983, 84, somewhere in that area. And I own a couple of different retail businesses, and this one was and I still own one of the businesses that I own in Edmonton is 41 years old this year. Still there. I've been an absentee owner for many years now. But having said that, that's where I was. I was I was a technician back at the time, still getting and learning about business and understanding it. Mm-hmm. And what had started to transpire for me is that as an entrepreneur, I had done a pretty good job of surrounding myself with individuals who were quite successful in business, and I admired them, and I kind of was looking at what they were doing. And what I came to realize that these business owners, regardless of how much money they made in their business, and they were very wealthy, many of them, what I noticed is that they all were investing in real estate. And I went, oh, well, if they're investing in real estate, I should do that too. And so that really is what got me going. And I started looking at real estate. And then at the time, and this is back in 2000, so almost 25 years ago now, I came across the Real Estate Investment Network. And the Real Estate Investment Network was about educating people and getting started in investing in real estate. And I started investing in real estate in Canada here back in 2000. And that was what really got me on the journey. And the story, again, my entrepreneurial accidents, I really liked the Real Estate Investment Network, very strong community, loved the education, loved the research, and ended up buying the business in 2011.
Serial entrepreneur.
Again, my entrepreneurial accidents, I didn't start out that way, but that's just how things evolve. And again, in the true spirit of entrepreneurship, I went, wow, I really like this. I love the community. I love the educative component of it. I love the fact that you are, in fact, helping people create wealth for themselves. We don't sell real estate, by the way. We are just simply education, economic research, and mentorship.
Just advisors. Yeah. That's an important part of real estate. You don't always have to be doing the transactions, but certainly plenty of people out there who want to make those and would love coaching and guidance from people who've been there, done that, made all the mistakes so that they can help them avoid some of those as well. And very smart to surround yourself with successful people early on in your career. I can't speak enough to the importance of that. Sometimes it can be hard for people to get into rooms or get audiences with these people. How are you able to accomplish that early on in your career?
Well, the Real Estate Investment Network was really about community. And to your point is that people early on started to realize that they could be in a community of like-minded individuals who are on a similar journey, who are looking to create a financial future. They wanted that security, that certainty, and ultimately they wanted financial freedom. And they could see that real estate was a way of doing that. But when you put yourself in a community, and part of what drove and to this day drives the RAIN community, 30 plus years later, is the fact that it's a culture of collaboration, of sharing, of helping others understand and learn from the mistakes that I've made or that others in the community have made. Don't make those mistakes. Here, let me show you or tell you how to do it, and don't do it the way I did it. So it became a real strong network. It also became a place where you could rely on the resources that showed up, investor focused realtors, mortgage brokers, lawyers, and a real kind of community of trust, what we refer to as trusted partners. So again, is that, within the RAIN model and what we teach a system, a process, 15-step system to investing in real estate. What we say, invest in real estate the right way. So this is not about speculation. It's not about gambling and throwing money up against the wall to see what sticks. It is literally following a pragmatic system, mostly and I guess primarily focused on, Jonathan, is that buy and hold. I'm going to buy this piece of property. I'm going to hang on to it for a number of years. It's going to cash flow. And, one day I'm going to be able to pull cash off the table, sell it, or it's going to pay me into the future. Now, from that, of course, all of the other strategies emerge, whether it be fix and flip or rent to own or agreements for sale or whatever other strategy you might use. But we always came back to that foundational piece.
And that's a great segue because next I was going to ask you about, as you were getting started in real estate, tell us about, some of your first investments and then how you graduated on to other ones. What did that progression look like? And what are some kind of top strategies today? Are these single family individual houses that you've held forever? Do you do multifamily? Do you get into commercial or trailer parks or, anything like that? What does your journey look like and what's been most notable for you?
Well, back in the days when I started, you could buy a single family property and rent it out and it would actually cash flow. Of course, those days have gone by and now you need, either duplex, triplex, fourplex, whatever the case may be. So, where I started was based on what was going on economically at the time in the cities that I was investing in. And it was really a detached single family. Now that went on to light industrial and multifamily and other things that I've done, including rent to own and different strategies. But it all started from saying, okay, I want to own these assets. I want to hold these assets and I'm going to hold them for a long time. And, recently in the past 3 or 4 years, 4 or 5 years, I have exited some real estate. I also had some joint venture partnerships that weren't working the way I wanted them to work anymore. It was time to get out of those joint venture partnerships. And so I sold to my partners. And having said that, I still own a lot of real estate and it is diverse in that it's detached. There's some condos in there, some light industrial, some multifamily.
Good to diversify your portfolio as much as possible, no matter what it is you're investing in.
Yeah. And to divorce relationships that you don't want to be in anymore, hence my joint venture partners. So
Absolutely.
That's how that went. Yeah.
One of my mottos in life is win fast, lose fast.
Yeah.
And I don't mind quitting something that, look good on paper, but really isn't serving me in the life that I'm living. So I fully support that move. Let's talk about that motto that I mentioned in your introduction. Success is simple. Acronym SIMPLE stands for significantly impacting many people's lives every day. What does that mean? How do you apply it? And how does that benefit you and them?
Well, it's showed up for me. That particular quote showed up for me, and I have a meditation practice, and that showed up for me almost 15 years ago. And it's kind of always running me beneath the surface is how do I make a difference in other people's lives? I've always felt that, in business and in relationship, how do I serve other people? How can I bring value to other people's lives? And that was important for me because it's really part of my purpose, part of my calling is to make a difference in other people's lives, to live intentionally so that I'm bringing value, supporting others in their growth. And so when that showed up for me in my meditation, I went, yeah. And it actually started, I'll share with you exactly where it started. I went, I would like to make more money. That's how that meditation started. And some version of that, I'm going by my memory. And then what showed up for me is significantly impact many people's lives every day. And I went, oh, yeah, that makes total sense, right? And so that's how it showed up. Now, where it evolved to quite quickly is, part of what drives most people, and I'll just speak for myself, is that we have a deep desire to be a contribution at some level. And we like significance. And I don't mean significance in terms of importance or being on a pedestal or being held in esteem. When I'm talking about significance in this context is that when we can have an impact on people's lives in a positive way, we feel significant. We feel like, I made a difference. And that is very inspiring. It's also, part of what often will keep us going. And so that's where that phrase came from. And so within the RAIN community, for example, we've served well over 200,000 people within our community over the years through our programs and through our community. It's Canada-wide. It's the only national organization of its kind educationally in the world of real estate. Within my retail business, in Alberta, it was in the sporting goods, specifically ice hockey and figure skating world and Olympic class.
Big up there.
Yeah, exactly. It is. And so, but we also got to be part of that and have been part of that community. So we look at it from a place of how can we make a difference and support other people in achieving their dreams, achieving their goals. And when you come from that place, things flow really well.
I 100% agree with that. It's such a simple thought in theory. It can be more difficult when put into practice, and something that we have to continue to remind ourselves about. You have to add that to your mantra. If you say, mantras every morning, I try and read one and I modify it as I go along. And I'm really excited to hear that came from a place of meditation. It's almost like you were manifesting. You said you wanted to make more money, and, the universe or God or whoever it is that, that you believe in kind of gave this to you. And it's been such a big part of your life from there onward. So moments of brilliance can spark at any time. And, it's important to not let those things go to the wayside, but, hold on to them and apply them to your life and let it become part of your core culture and who you are, because it's going to pay you back in, hundredfold for sure.
Well, you make a good point. I just want to finish on that thought that you made is that, you talked about it. I think you used the part of your core culture. It's not a thing, that acronym and that thought process isn't a thing that lives outside of me. One of my highest values is being a contribution. So when I look at one of my core values, being a contribution is just who I am. And I own that part of me. So in other words, I don't want to operate any other way. And so when I'm looking at in my business model, my mission statement, how I operate with the team, the culture that I'm trying to create is all about being a contribution. And yes, we're profitable. And yes, we want to make money. And yes, we want to charge, but we want to bring value that people want to pay for. And when your core value is, and you understand that core value, it's not a conscious thought. It's what you always come back to. It just is. And so I just want to shine a light on that because you said it really well, which is it's core culture. It's identity. It's who we are.
And you said something really important too when you were explaining that. And that's that helping other people, being a servant or a servant's mindset or of service to other people doesn't necessarily mean that you work for free or that you can't make any money. Because like you said, this meditation focused on how do I make more money? And then that's when this revealed itself to you. So those two things can go together.
They do go together.
You don't have to, live in poverty if you have this attitude of service to other people. So I want to talk about mentorship and coaching because, there are so many people who are out there making success happen every single day. And, they might have a mentor or two here or there, mentee that they help along the way. But, for somebody who has made a big part of their career about coaching and mentoring other people, I'm sure that not only do you have a lot of experience, but you have a lot of stories.
Mhm.
And that information is probably some of the most valuable to our audience who is either just getting started in investment real estate or trying to grow what they have and picking up information here and there. And one thing that we do here at the Real Estate Mentor is we want to provide as much actionable advice to people as we can to where they can take that and maybe even start applying that today or tomorrow when they get home and have listened to this podcast. So tell me what some of the advice might be that you have for beginners. Let's say not their first property, but they're within their first 5 and they're trying to scale up. What is some general advice that you have for everybody in that subsect?
Well, there's a couple things around that, Jonathan, that are really important to understand is that, a lot of the times people make real estate very, I guess, they make it more complicated than it is, and or they don't take it as serious as they need to take it. So it's to say this is that, for over 30 years, we've taught a 15-step system to investing in real estate. So for those just getting started, there's an understanding that this is systematic. There is a process. And when we learn that some of the steps that we need to take is, okay, what drives real estate? Why do we invest in real estate? So we ask ourselves the question, why are we investing in real estate? Well, I'm trying to create a financial future, security, certainty, even financial freedom. So we look into the future and we say, that's what we're trying to achieve. And real estate is one of the ways that we're going to get there. So how do we look at real estate? First off is that we have to say, okay, I want to see the future of real estate. So often people look into where real estate was and where real estate is, and they make decisions from those two places often, or they're speculating going, well, they said this is going to go up because they said so. Okay, well, why is it going to go up? Real estate operates in cycles. And, when we look at what's happening, there's a fundamental formula, what we call the long-term real estate success formula. Number one is what is the economic conditions of a region? You said you're in Louisville in Kentucky, right?
Yes.
Right. So break down a city and say, okay, what's happening there? What is the GDP? What is the gross domestic product of that particular region? And that is to say, what's the economic health of that region? Well, the numbers are good. Okay, when you have numbers that are good, what does that mean? Well, people come into that city. So you've got people moving in there. Why are they moving in there? Because they're looking for jobs. Oh, well, if you've got strong GDP and you got job growth, that means that you've got population growth. If you've got population growth, you've got rental demand. And so as a rental housing provider, what do I want to be? I want to have this space, we'll call it this product called my rental housing. And I want to know that I have a lineup of clients coming to it who are going to rent it out and going to pay me for it. So fundamentally is that real estate is not about speculation. It is literally, you can see the future of real estate. And when you start to look at the economic drivers of real estate, not my buddy next door or the guy at work said, or this builder said, no, well, what are the economic fundamentals that drive real estate into the future? Because we're buying real estate for the future, not for today. And when we break down the economic fundamentals, we start to realize that it is very repeatable. We see it all of the time. And it doesn't matter what city you live in, what state you live in, what country you live in. If it's a first world country, GDP growth drives jobs drive population growth drives rental demand. Those are kind of the key.
Absolutely. And, I think talking about real estate being in cycles, we're seeing a big one right now in the commercial office space sector.
Mm-hmm.
Every day, it seems that we are hearing about, 25, 40-story office buildings in major cities that are being sold for $20 million less than what they were purchased for 8 or 9 years ago. Obviously, there's no way they could have predicted that, or they probably wouldn't have made that investment or exited a lot earlier. But over $1 trillion of debt coming due in that commercial space in the next 2 years, that can even trickle down to banks and all other forms of industry. But, as funny as commercial can be sometimes, and certainly that's probably more speculatory than residential. Residential, is a fairly safe place to invest. And I like your comment earlier, single family houses, you have to be very particular on those, because like you said, to get those to cash flow, multifamily, getting as many doors as you can under a single roof, not only can that be easier to manage, but it's probably going to be able to provide more cash flow once you start working on that
Yes.
pro forma.
Of course. And that's, you said it exactly the way it needs to be said, which is when you get more doors under one roof, your opportunities exist to increase the NOI on that particular building and to serve a number of clients to actually build forced appreciation into it. There's a lot you can do with it. I want to go back to the commercial side of it. A comment you made, Jonathan, is that when we originally started all the lockdowns, and I don't know how locked down Kentucky was, but we were really locked down. But as we saw what was happening, it's a public record. I was saying back then that the commercial space is going to get hammered. And the reason that was it was very obvious to me that people were wanting to work and continue to work from home, and they were going to do everything that they could to not have to commute anymore. Now that really was, they'll eventually come back. And I don't know what it's like again in all parts of the US. I know that in Canada, specifically in our bigger markets, people are going, no, I'm not going back to the office 5 days a week. I'll go back 2 days a week. Our government said, okay, well, government employees, our public sector employees, we want you back in the office at least 3 days a week. And they're going, no, I'm not doing it. They got a union on their side, all the rest of it. The point is this, is that there's a ripple effect of connecting the dots. So I just want to share this with you because I think it's important for people to understand that it is all predictable. And so when you look at human psychology, when you look at the fact that people are going, I'm not commuting anymore, I can work from home. Why would I go into the office, right? And some people need to go in the office. They're the way they are. Their character is such that I need to be with people, and I get all of that. But there's lots that are going, no, I'm going to stay at home, look after my kids. I'll get my job done. I'll do a great job, blah, blah, blah. The point is this. That commercial softening that you're seeing, especially in the office space, is going to continue. If anything, it'll probably escalate a little bit more. Well, why is that a problem? Well, if you look at real estate, residential, let's say the condo market in many downtown cores, they're going to suffer. Why? Well, they built a lot of condos. They built a lot of downtown condos to accommodate those that are living downtown. Well, guess what? They're not going to work downtown anymore. They're going, no, I can buy more affordable, better space away from the office, and I don't have to drive and commute every day. I can do that I can do that 2 or 3 days a week, but I don't have to live downtown. So that has an effect on that downtown residential real estate that many were buying to rent out. So that's one.
And the restaurants and retail that were all built to support that office culture and environment. And then the people who bought condos or flats to be close to the office, if all of that starts to dissipate, then I know that cities are already starting right now to really rethink their downtowns. They're even in the United States trying to get rid of the term central business district or CBD because it no longer defines what it is post-pandemic. And so the cities that do the best are going to be the ones who can repurpose their downtowns and find ways to still bring people down there, because they will forever, I feel, be the core of a city. Once you start sprawling and you have all this suburban, life going on out there, there's only so much that you can do out there through those commercial corridors. The downtown is really the hub of energy, excitement, and all of that. So it's going to be an interesting thing to watch over the next 5 to 10 years to see what cities reinvent themselves and how they do it. And there will always be real estate opportunities because those tall buildings aren't going anywhere. The cost to convert them to residential or into a hotel or something like that are often cost prohibitive. Some might need to be torn down to do new construction, which is much cheaper, but they're not just going to sit there vacant forever. So there's going to be a lot of opportunities, and I'm going to be excited to see how creative people get to repurpose a lot of that and take it in a new direction.
Yeah, I think there's an aspect to it too, Jonathan, that we have to consider, is that how I'm looking at it. I just did a show today that we talked about this, which is that bad news for some is really good news for others. As we see these cycles, and if we stay on top of these cycles, there's a lot of people that are waiting for, number one, the real estate to crash and or the market to shift or for it to go back to where it was. It's not going back to where it was. The dynamic has changed. There'll be some version of what once was, but things are changing. Things are evolving. It's like people hanging around and waiting. Well, once the interest rates come back down, no, interest rates aren't coming back down in a meaningful way in a hurry. And whether that's US or Canada, a lot of people are living into this future state called interest rates will come down. I don't happen to be on that page yet. And not that they won't eventually come back down, but I think that what little they do come down isn't going to have a huge impact. It's all to say this: real estate and the game that we play as investors is changing. Our job is to extrapolate the trends and the shift of trends that we're seeing and then say, oh, okay, I can see where this is going and I'm going to invest accordingly. And that could be in development, small development, taking a bad chunk of land with a single family or a duplex on it and knocking it down and putting an 8-plex or 6-plex on it, depending on zoning, of course. What's happening in Canada, by the way, is there's a lot of zoning changes that are happening. So it's allowing people to do that. So I digress a little bit, but what I'm suggesting in all of this is that we look at it, and because we were very comfortable with low interest rates, where everybody's into a boom cycle, everybody's a genius in a boom cycle, we're all getting rich in real estate, that game's over. There'll be pockets of it, but that game's over.
Well, I think that this is a great discussion into the continuation of what you were talking about earlier, the evolution of real estate and how there are going to be opportunities everywhere, just being creative, staying on top of news, trends, being able to execute. Sometimes it's going to take a partnership to do some bigger things, like you talked about. So start building those teams around you by integrating yourself and plugging into these investment networks and surrounding yourself with people who have capital, who have experience, who have resources that can come together and execute some of these projects that are really going to be, fulfilling to you as an investor and provide benefit to the city at large as well. And like Warren Buffett says, be greedy when others are fearful and fearful when others are greedy. And I think there are a lot of fearful people right now. So, buckle up.
There's an interesting, that it goes back to kind of where you originally came with the question, as somebody who's just starting out. There's a phrase that a friend shared many years ago with me, and he said, you can't steal in slow motion. And he used that in reference to when deals show up, you have to be prepared and you have to be able to take action. Now, from a totally getting started point of view, and I'm sure you've seen it as well, I think the one oversight that new investors make is they're not prepared. So in other words, a deal shows up and they go, okay, well, let me see how much money I've got. Let me see if I can get a mortgage, see what I can do. No. It's like, take the time it takes so it takes less time. And that is to say this: get your financial house in order before you do too much, because otherwise it's just a waste of everybody's time. And so when a deal does show up, where my down payment is, so you have some idea of what you might qualify in terms of getting a mortgage and your timing for certain things, so that the bank isn't saying, okay, well, send me this paper, send me this paper, send me this paper. No, you go, okay, here, boof, here it is. And that means sitting down probably with a mortgage broker and going, okay, if I wanted to buy a property today, how would I qualify? And they're going to say, okay, send me this paper, send me this paper. Do all of that before. So if you're giving a new investor a really strong tip, that would be the key, is get your financial house in order. Know your profit and loss, know your net worth, know where your money is, where it's going, and makes all the difference in the world, so that when a deal shows up, you can take action.
Absolutely right. Yeah. Just keep your net worth written down, list of all of your accounts, including retirement, what's in them. Keep your last 2 years of taxes. Keep all of this just in a drive folder that you can send over to somebody else whenever they ask for it. And also don't forget about your business structure. I can't tell you how many times when I go to write a contract for somebody, I ask them, is this going to be in your name or a business name? And they say, well, it's going to be in a business name, but I haven't set that up yet. Set it up. If you're not making any money in that LLC, you don't have a lot of work and requirements around that, have it ready to go. That's part of manifesting as well. If you know that you're going to invest in real estate, have all of this ready to go, because if you're sitting on the sidelines waiting for something to fall into your lap, you're going to miss it. It's going to take too long.
Yep. Hence the phrase, you can't steal in slow motion, because good opportunities, if you're not there, if you get that opportunity and you can't take it, you could leave hundreds of thousands of dollars on the table for the next guy who's prepared.
Absolutely. So, that's great advice for beginners. What I was going to ask you about next, and you can choose which one you want, because, I don't want us to go too long here. It's going to either ask you about common pitfalls, common mistakes that people make in business, or one of your biggest mentee success stories that you're really proud of that you kind of help coach them through? And if they're short, we can do both.
Well, nothing I say is ever too short, Jonathan, but there's a couple of approaches that we look at. Ultimately, real estate investors run out of capital. I don't know a single investor that has enough money in their own pocket to grow a portfolio. Once you buy one or two doors or three doors, it's like, oh, this works. Oh, but I'm out of money. And so ultimately, then you need to create relationship and, creating business structures and joint venture partnerships, whatever that might look like. The challenge that many kind of set themselves up for is they look at just the money side of it. So let's say, Jonathan, I meet you. You're a nice guy. You seem to know a lot about real estate. And, I've got this deal, if you got a couple $100,000. And so we come to some agreement. We don't write the deal down. We don't share and say, okay, well, how do you operate? What's your goals? We actually don't take the time to really, number one, get to know each other and say, do we even share common values? Do we share a common business philosophy? So then we get into it because it's all about that money, that check that you're sliding across the table that we're going to buy this deal. Joint venture partnerships rarely go wrong in the first couple of years. Not that they don't, but they rarely go wrong in the first couple of years. It's usually down the road, 3, 5, 7 years down the road. Mm-hmm. And then you start to realize that, number one, your values don't align. What happens if you lose your job? What happens if you get a divorce? What happens if, and those contingencies aren't talked about, have never even come up. And then all of a sudden you go, oh, I lost my job. I got to sell. I got to get out. And you go, well, hold it. Well, where did you get the money from? Well, I borrowed it. Well, mm-hmm. You didn't tell me you borrowed it. Well, I did. And I got a $600 a month payment and I got no job. I got to get out. Well, how much does that cost you to get out of that deal early? Now, I can't even count the number of times that I've seen those scenarios. It just, that's
those prepayment penalties and not having a good operating agreement that outlines all of those things. Divorce is a big one because, a judge can sometimes order things need to be liquidated, even if they are in a partnership, depending on what state you're in and what the laws are. So definitely consult an attorney anytime you get into situation like that. And to your point about, making sure that you have the same core values, nothing will be more of a shock to you if you really want to enhance the lives of people and provide good quality housing for them and stay on top of the maintenance. And you didn't know that you just went into business with a slumlord. Yeah. That is going to be a fight every single day.
Totally. And exactly. And that's a really great point. And there's another side to this is that you mentioned is that the thing about a joint venture in any business, like in this kind of a scenario, that at some point you want a divorce and it is going to be, and you want it to be amicable so that when the day comes that you say, okay, this is when we're going to exit, this is the conditions we're going to exit under, and this is how the exit's going to go. And it's all pre-planned so that there isn't a bunch of drama attached to it. And so ultimately it's taking the time take the time it takes. So it takes less time. And in this case, it takes less money because you're not in court fighting about it. So that's a really common mistake made. And it's really common because real estate investors run out of money and they ultimately need to raise capital or attract capital at some level. And that's where things go off the rails.
Absolutely. Great advice.
I'll share one of my success stories when I first got investing in real estate. It was I call it my $1 million accident. I made $1 million by accident.
And not a bad thing.
Yeah, it was really fun. It was light industrial, and I had bought this brand new building in Edmonton where I have my stores, and this particular building came up, kind of strip mall condo, buy condos within the strip mall, pretty straightforward. Well, originally I went in there and this was in the late 90s and I leased that unit. And because of the store, I took the bigger portion of that particular building and I leased the unit and it was really great. And I got a great deal because we were the first ones in there. They were also trying to attract legitimate clients into that particular strip. Long story short, 5 years later, the strip is full. That area of that part of town had started to build out. Well, guess what? They're going to up my rent. They're going to actually double my rent. In my initial negotiation, and only by accident, they said, why don't you buy these units? And I said, I don't have the cash right now to buy these units. They were $500,000 collectively for these units. And that was in the late 90s. And I said, I just don't have the cash for the down payment to do this. I actually didn't even know I barely knew how to spell real estate back then. Was it one word, two words? Do you capitalize it? Like, that's kind of where I was. For some reason, and I don't know, I can't really tell you why, I said, would you give me an option to purchase for this particular property in, let's say, a few years from now? I don't know if the developer was, just asleep that day or wasn't as optimistic that day, but here's the story. He wrote me an option to purchase for 5 years for the original price. 5 years later,
didn't even adjust for inflation.
That he didn't, and he had no idea. And of course, 5 years later, I saw that property. I'd become a member of the RAIN community. I started to understand real estate. And so he had to sell me that property for $500,000. Okay. 5 years later, it was worth about $675. I saw the future. I got that deal done. And that property today is worth 2.4. So, long story short, but early on, when it crossed that, when I went to get it appraised, and when I got it all set, when all was said and done, I'd accidentally made $1 million on the lift in appreciation of that particular property. So that was my story about how sometimes, just being intentional and understanding to the degree you do, but not being afraid of putting it out there, things can turn out.
Absolutely. I cannot wait until I earn my first accidental million. I'm gonna start manifesting that one. I'm gonna add it to it. So, what does the future hold for you and your family?
Well, my family right now is my daughter who lives in another province and my 2 grandchildren. And my wife and I live in the Fraser Valley of beautiful British Columbia. We live downtown Vancouver. We're just out in the country, live on 5 acres with horses and cows and a couple of Bernese mountain dogs. And, we're in that phase of our life where, I'm on the Freedom 95 program. I don't ever intend to quit working. I feel young and enthusiastic and pretty much inspired every day. We are blessed with our life. And that's not to say that we don't deal with problems every single day. There's a fundamental that in business is that it's never easy. It's how you hold it, right? So solving problems is the life of an entrepreneur, of a business owner. And I've got teams of people and, I got to keep, I want to keep the business running and profitable and pay my staff and have team and have fun and create relationships and have conversations like this. So for me going forward, for my wife and I, we have the podcast, The Everyday Millionaire, and we do a podcast called Mindset Matters, which is really our lead gen into a program that we teach around Think Tank. And in Think Tank, it is a live coaching program, and it's clarity equals velocity. That's our theme for 2024. Clarity equals velocity. And we're supporting people in getting clarity in their own identity, who they are in the context of their life, and what their values are, what their driving values are, and understanding themselves. So it is really a journey of self-discovery that serves business, your career, and your relationships. So that's what's in store for us next. This phase of our life is all about doing what we love to do.
That's really exciting. Yeah. I mean, for people like us, the work never stops. We're not going to stop, but you can choose what you want to do. You can still live a good life, and you have to be intentional about it. You can wake up every day and stay busy from the minute you wake up until the minute you go to bed and have your calendar packed full of things, or you can make smart strategic decisions and still continue to be successful and still live the life you want to live, travel when you want, go where you want. And, you're not slacking off, but we don't have to be busy all the time. We're just high-level problem solvers. That's what good real estate agents are as well. We negotiate and we solve problems all day.
Well, I think there's a part of it too, Jonathan, that there's a phrase that we often use, you might be familiar with it, which is, are you in motion or are you in action? And many people are busy being in motion, but not being in action. And there's a fundamental difference. It's like we can go to a conference, that's motion. Then are we going to take what we learned at that conference and put it into action?
Exactly.
And people confuse
Same
motion
with reading books.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And so people confuse motion, being in motion, with being in action is different. The other thing I would expand on what you said as well, Jonathan, is that there's I don't know, a meme, a cliche, whatever, which is saying, when you love what you do, when your vocation is like your vacation, you'll never work another day in your life. And when you live on purpose, when you live into your purpose, when you're doing what you love to do, again, I come back to our purpose. My wife and I are really clear. Our purpose is to be a contribution, to make a difference in other people's lives and support them in achieving their goals. There is nothing more fun than doing that for us. Mm-hmm. And so for us, it isn't a grind, although sometimes it's a grind, but it always is rewarding, and it's part of the journey. And so whenever I'm challenged with anything, I look at it and going, well, I work out physically 3 or 4 days a week. And I know that if I'm going to get stronger, I have to lift more weight. So when stuff comes up and shit seems to be hitting the fan, I look at it and I'm going, yeah, I got to lift a little bit more weight to get stronger. And next time it'll be easier. And, so it's always a little bit about how we philosophically look at what we do. But I know that when we're living our life on purpose, because you know what your purpose is, it changes the game.
Absolutely. I wouldn't do anything else than what I'm doing right now. It's only going to get better. We might tweak it a little bit. I'm going to find other things, but I know that I'm right where I'm supposed to be right now.
Yeah.
And if I was where I am right now several years ago, I probably wouldn't have been prepared to be as successful as I am right now doing what I'm doing, because there's a lot of life experiences. There's a lot of education that I've picked up that has led me to here. So, I'm very thankful to be where I am and have this podcast and be helping so many clients and, just really loving life. Mm. But one last thing, I don't want to get away without asking this, because I wrote this down when I was on your website, and I want to know how to interpret this. It says high performance is a result of low tolerances.
Mm-hmm. So true. Okay, let me give you a little bit of context for that. I'll use a car analogy. So when you consider that maybe you go and you buy, I don't know, a Ford Prius, if Ford makes Prius, whatever, we buy a Prius, and it doesn't matter how good a driver you are. You could be a professional driver, and all you do is drive the wheels right off that car. And as soon as you get in excess of 65, 70 miles an hour, you're pushing the limits. The suspension isn't designed to do much more. The tires aren't designed to do. The drivetrain can't take it. So it really is limited in terms of its performance by how big the tolerances are. There's probably some slack in the wheel. The tires aren't made of the materials that they need to be made of. The suspension isn't meant for going around corners fast. Now, take that same kind of analogy or that same metaphor and say, let's apply it to a Porsche. Let's look at a 911. Well, all of a sudden you can drive that car at 180 miles an hour or 150 or 200, whatever the number is in a 911 these days. But the point is the tolerances are tight. Okay. Tires are different. Suspension is different. Horsepower is different. Everything about that car is designed to go fast and perform because the tolerances just got tighter. And then you say, okay, well, let's up the game. Let's go to, go to a Pagani. All of a sudden you're paying $3 million for a car, and every screw, every rivet, every part of that car is designed for more speed, better handling, to go corners faster. So it's all about performance. Now, if we take that and translate it into our teams within our business, high performance is a result of low tolerances. I'll give you an example. In my business, we talk about culture a lot. I actually help my team design their culture that they're going to work in. They decide what the culture is. I guide them, I facilitate for sure, and I get them to where we want to be. So in my culture, in the culture of my businesses, no complain, no blame, zero gossip, not tolerated. So we create a culture, for example, then the environment on top of that. All to say this, high performance is a result of low tolerances. So what do we tolerate with ourselves or with our team? What do we tolerate? Some might say, well, what do you mean? And I would say this, I'll give you a really good example because we've all experienced it at some level. I'm going on a diet. I'm not going to drink Coke anymore. And then a week later, we drink Coke. And a week after that, we're back to our old habits again. That is us having no tolerances for our own trust. We can't even trust ourselves. And so that's a tolerance. So when you get into high or low tolerances, you wouldn't tolerate that. You would go, no, I'm not okay with that. That's not my commitment. So high performance is a result of low tolerances. And that comes to trust. It comes to how we operate, toxic environments that we stand for. Our best sales guy, he's our best sales guy, but he's an asshole. He's toxic, right? But we put up with him. Why? Because he's a great salesman. So what?
Yeah.
Get rid of him. Free up the space for somebody who will sell as much or more and culturally fits with the rest of the vibe, where I don't gossip. I treat people with respect. I treat people the way I want to be treated. I don't hold myself on a pedestal. We are here as a team, whatever the culture is that you're creating. So I don't know if that articulates what that statement means, but hopefully that gives you an idea. I do a whole segment on that. I do like a workshop on that one.
And it might need it, but you clearly articulated, especially in that second one. I had an aha moment whenever I heard exactly what it was, and makes perfect sense to me. And it's a Toyota Prius.
Toyota Prius. Okay.
Well, Patrick, tell everybody where they can find you, how they can connect with you, absorb more information from you.
The best place is to either go to the everydaymillionaire.ca website. You can follow me on Twitter at Francey, same as my Instagram. The Real Estate Investment Network, raincanada.com. So those are the key places.
Patrick, thank you so much for being on the show today. Thank you all for joining us. We have quite a few more episodes coming this year with equally great content. So tune in every 2 weeks. We launch a new episode of The Real Estate Mentor. Thanks again for joining. I'm your host, Jonathan Klunk, realtor in Louisville, Kentucky with EX, also throughout all 50 states and now globally. So I can help you too in Canada. I'm on Instagram at Top Louisville Realtor. Look me up. You won't be disappointed in the content there. So thanks so much for joining. Have a great day.